The universe is old, and memory is short. Civilizations rise, conquer their local clusters, and convince themselves they are the apex predators of existence. The Xylth Dominion was no different. For 10,000 years, they had swept across the Virgo supercluster, assimilating or extinguishing every species they encountered. Their ships were works of art, flowing hulls of biocrystalline weave that harnessed the ambient energy of stars. They believed their technology was the pinnacle of evolution. They believed that nothing could withstand the song of their dissonance cannons. They didn't know that some species don't evolve to harmonize with the universe. Some species evolve to grab the universe by the throat and force it to submit. The target was the Void Gate. It was a massive, ancient structure floating in the dark space between galaxies, a ring of dormant neutronium the size of a solar system. The Xylth historians claimed it was a relic of the precursors, a doorway to a virgin galaxy ripe for harvest. They called it the Milky Way. To the Xylth, it was just another resource node waiting to be stripped. They assembled their grand armada, 10,000 capital ships, 1,000,000 strike craft, and the pride of the Dominion, the dreadnought * Eternal Song *, at the precipice of the gate. High Admiral Xylth stood upon the command dais of the * Eternal Song *, his multifaceted eyes scanning the holographic displays. The energy readings from the gate were spiking. His scientists had spent a century deciphering the activation sequence. Today, the Dominion would expand. Activation cycle complete. A subordinate chittered from the sensor pit. The dimensional membrane is thinning. We have a stable wormhole in 3, 2, 1. Space tore open. It wasn't a gentle opening. It was a violent rupture of space-time, bleeding exotic particles into the void. The center of the ring turned from absolute black to a swirling vortex of electric blue and violent violet. Forward, Xylth commanded. Let us see what primitives dwell in the dark. The Dominion fleet surged forward, their engines singing in the vacuum. They passed through the event horizon, shields flared to handle the gravimetric shear. Seconds later, they emerged into the Milky Way. Xylth expected many things. He expected a barren void, or perhaps scattered primitive radio signals, or maybe a disorganized fleet of fusion-powered barges. What he did not expect was silence. The sensor screens remained blank. There were no stars. Report, Xylth snapped. Where are the stars? Have we miscalculated the exit coordinates? Negative, High Admiral, the sensor officer replied, his voice trembling with a confusion that species of the Dominion rarely felt. The stars are there, but they are shrouded. Shrouded. There is a structure, a Dyson swarm. No, it is too dense. Admiral, the entire local star cluster is enclosed in a stealth field of impossible magnitude. We are not in open space. We are inside a kill box. Before Xylth could process the absurdity of enclosing a star cluster, the darkness lit up. But it wasn't the light of stars. It was the harsh, industrial red of active scanning beams, thousands of them. They cut through the Xylth stealth coding like it wasn't even there, painting every ship in the armada. Then the communications grid screamed. It wasn't a hail. It wasn't a diplomatic request. It was a broadcast on every frequency, in a language the universal translator struggled to parse before settling on a rough translation. The voice was synthetic, flat, and terrifyingly calm. Unauthorized incursion detected. Sector Sigma 9, Terran Federation space. Drop your shields and power down your cores. You have 10 seconds. Xylth bristled, the audacity. Open a channel, he ordered. I am High Admiral Xylth of the Xylth Dominion. We do not surrender to primitives hiding in the dark. Prepare to be pacified. He signaled the attack. Fire the dissonance beam. The * Eternal Song * shuddered as its main weapon charged. This weapon had cracked the crusts of planets. It fired a beam of concentrated anti-reality that unmade matter at the atomic level. The beam lashed out into the darkness, targeting the source of the red scanning lights. The beam struck something. There was a flash, not of explosion, but of absorption. The darkness rippled, like a stone thrown into a pond, and the beam simply stopped. Target unaffected. The tactical officer screamed. Energy absorption at 100%. They ate it, Admiral. Slowly, the Terran ships revealed themselves. They dropped their stealth fields, and the Xylth bridge crew recoiled in horror. These were not the elegant, organic curves of Dominion ships. These were brutish mountains of gray metal and composite armor, scarred and angular. They looked like flying bricks, ugly and utilitarian. But the sheer scale of them was mind-breaking. The smallest escort ships dwarfed the Dominion heavy cruisers, and behind them a vessel the size of a moon loomed, bristling with kinetic batteries. They didn't use shields, the science officer whispered, his voice bordering on hysteria. Admiral, their hulls, they are comprised of collapsed matter, neutronium plating. Our energy weapons can't scratch them. It's like shooting water pistols at a black hole. Xylthas stared at the screen. Impossible, the mass required. They couldn't move, physics forbids it. That is the problem, Admiral, the officer replied. They are ignoring physics. The Terran voice returned. Compliance negative, threat assessment, extreme, engaging tactical protocols, welcome to hell. The Terran fleet didn't fire lasers, they didn't fire plasma, they fired solid slugs. To the Xylth, kinetic weaponry was a relic of the Stone Age. Throwing rocks was something savages did. But they failed to understand what happens when a tungsten rod the size of a skyscraper is accelerated to 0, 99% of the speed of light. The first volley was silent, invisible, and devastating. The projectiles impacted the Dominion front line with the force of small supernovas. Xylth shields, designed to disperse energy frequencies, shattered instantly under the sheer kinetic transfer. The biocrystalline hulls vaporized. Ships simply ceased to exist, replaced by expanding clouds of superheated plasma and debris. Evasive maneuvers. Xylthas roared, clutching his command console as the *eternal song* rocked violently from the shockwaves of his escort ships dying around him. Return fire, all batteries. The Dominion fleet scrambled, their formations breaking. They poured fire into the Terran lines. Plasma torpedoes, antimatter streams, gravity distorters, everything the Dominion had perfected over 10 millennia. They struck the Terran ships, and the explosions were spectacular. But as the smoke cleared, the gray hulls emerged, scorched but unbroken. Their armor is self-repairing, the tactical officer cried out. Nanite swarms are knitting the hull breaches faster than we can cause them. And, Admiral, I am detecting a dimensional anomaly launching from their flagship. From the massive Terran dreadnought. A single missile launched. It moved slowly, almost lazily. It didn't have an engine flare. It just slid through space. Intercept it, Xylthas ordered. Point defense lasers raked the missile. It didn't detonate, it didn't veer, it simply phased through the lasers. It's shifting out of phase, the sensor officer screamed. It exists in 4 dimensions simultaneously. We cannot hit it. The missile detonated in the center of the Dominion formation, but it wasn't an explosion. It was an implosion, a singularity bomb. For a brief second, a tear in the universe opened, a localized event horizon. Gravity inverted. 50 Xylth cruisers were dragged screaming toward the center point, their hulls stretching and spaghettifying before vanishing into the micro-black hole. Then, the singularity evaporated, releasing a burst of Hawking radiation that fried the sensors of every surviving ship. Xylthas stared at the empty space where a quarter of his fleet had been seconds ago. His mandibles trembled. This wasn't war, this was pest control. Retreat, he whispered. The word tasted like ash. Retreat to the gate, close the connection. The Dominion fleet turned to run, but the Terrans were not done. They are attempting to flee, the synthetic voice boomed over the open channel. Lockdown protocol initiated. No witnesses. Around the Dominion fleet, space began to harden. The Xylth warp drives whined and died. The subspace frequencies went dead. The Terrans had deployed an interdiction field of such magnitude that it effectively solidified the vacuum. They had turned the battlefield into a cage. They have locked down local space. The navigator wept. We are trapped. The Terran fleet advanced. They didn't rush. They moved with the terrifying inevitability of a glacier. The massive railguns cycled, loading fresh rounds. The silence of the void was filled with the metaphorical sound of a shotgun racking a round into the chamber. Xylth looked at the tactical display. The Terran flagship was hailing him specifically. Accepting unconditional surrender, the voice said, "Power down or be deleted." Pride was a powerful thing. It had built the Dominion, but fear was primal. Xylth looked at the destruction, at the debris of his invincible armada floating as dust against the gray hulls of the human monsters. "We surrender," Xylth said, his voice breaking. "We yield, wise choice." The Terran ships halted. Boarding craft, jagged and aggressive, began to launch. Xylth sat in his command chair, waiting for the end of his career and likely his life. He watched the main screen as a Terran shuttle approached. He had to know who these gods of war were. "Computer," he asked quietly, "analyze their historical database. If they are broadcasting on open channels, find out who they are. How long have they been a spacefaring civilization?" The computer processed the data stream flooding from the Terran network. Processing, the computer chimed. Subject, humanity, origin, Sol system. First faster-than-light travel achieved 3,000 years ago. Xylth froze. 3,000. The Dominion has traveled the stars for 10,000 years. How did they surpass us so quickly? The computer continued, parsing the data. Analysis suggests a divergence in philosophical development. The Dominion focused on harmony, efficiency, and sustainability. Humanity's history is defined by conflict. Constant, internal, industrial-scale conflict. The computer replied. They spent 5,000 years warring with themselves before they even left their own gravity well. They perfected the art of killing before they perfected medicine. They treat the laws of physics not as rules, but as suggestions to be broken when convenient for weaponry. Their technology is not elegant, Admiral. It is merely extremely effective violence applied to science. Xylth watched the boarding craft latch onto his hull. He heard the screech of cutting lasers breaching the airlock. He realized then the mistake the galaxy had made. The Dominion had spent millennia perfecting the art of living. Humanity had spent millennia perfecting the art of dying, and taking everything else with them. As the armored Terran Marines stormed the bridge, their weapons raised, their visors opaque and soulless, Xylth understood. The Void Gate wasn't a door to a resource. It was a seal, and the Xylth had just broken it. The humans didn't stop at the surrender. That was the part the history books would later emphasize. The Dominion expected a treaty, perhaps reparations. What they got was an annexation. The Terran Federation didn't just defend the Milky Way. They traced the Xylth trajectory back through the gate. They didn't see the Dominion as a defeated enemy. They saw a threat vector that needed to be neutralized at the source. Months later, when the Terran expeditionary fleets poured into the Virgo supercluster, the Dominion citizens looked up at their skies. They didn't see the elegant curves of their protectors. They saw the gray, blocky shapes of the Terran war machine. They saw the primitive projectile weapons that cracked moons and the shields that ignored physics. The galaxy would never forget the day the Void Gate opened. It was the day the universe learned that while some civilizations build for eternity, humanity builds for the fight, and the fight never ends. Too late, the Dominion realized that by opening the gate, they hadn't discovered a new world. They had simply unlocked the cage of the most dangerous species in existence. And now, the cage was open, and the monsters were hungry.